Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to the main event, the history of the Champions League. We are at the end of season 12-13 and an all-German final at Wembley looming in the horizon. Thank you for joining us. I am joined, as always, by my two friends and colleagues. David, Edgar, how are we doing?
I'm good, my friend. Very much looking forward to this. Two great sides in the final.
Indeed, and Adam Thornton is here to break it down for us. How are we, my friend?
Yes, looking forward to getting into it. Lots more goals in this one as well, which we always like to see. Well, two of us always like to see.
Yeah, there's a bit of a nonsense here, isn't there, really? Let's be honest.
4 goals in a football match. Can't believe it.
No, it's... Yeah. Well, let's start there then, because it kind of took everyone's breath away. Bayern Munich, Barcelona, again, heavyweight clashes. We've seen a few in the knockouts already. Adam, haven't really given us what we wanted. Milan versus Barca, Bayern versus Juve, very one way. But now we're thinking, right, here we go. Bayern Munich seem to be the form team. So close last year. They haven't let it alter their stride at all. But Barcelona's still Barcelona. Messi's still there. They've got all those tools. This is going to be sensational. It was, but maybe not quite as advertised.
No, definitely not. A clash, I guess. We've been talking about gegenpressing. I don't particularly think that Bayern Munich would class themselves as tactical innovators, but I do think they're in a similar vein. To be honest, they've got better players. They're maybe not a team like David sort of alluded to. They're not a team that would ever say this is who we are, other than just winning. I guess, but in hindsight, it is probably similar to Inter Milan a few years before. It's probably the worst type of team for Barcelona to face at this stage, because they're dominant. They've got such intent on the wings, and Barcelona are, as we know, built on fullback and wingers interchanging. Dani Alves going forwards, Jordi Alba this season going forwards. You've got Messi, you've got Pedro. It's a huge part of their identity, and I guess most teams let them do that. As we spoke about with that Dortmund and Malaga piece, most teams will let Dortmund be pressed, they'll sort of play into their hands, and I think Barcelona will be used to that as well. Real Madrid didn't do it. Inter Milan didn't do it. Bayern Munich didn't do it maybe in another way, because they're like, well, actually, we've got two wingers as well, and we think they're very good, and they think they're very good, and also we're Bayern Munich. So I think that's really interesting, because they didn't press high in this game. They showed respect, Bayern Munich, but everybody knows how Barcelona are going to play. And for me, Bayern Munich let Barcelona do what they wanted to do in areas that were non-threatening, and then essentially set traps for them. And once they set those traps, you've got Philipp Lahm and David Alaba wide. You've got Müller and Robben. Okay, Robben's wide, but he's not just a winger; he floats inside. You've got Ribéry as well at points as well. You've got a really, really solid midfield too, as well. So it is a surprise because of the hype and because of all the stuff that I probably talk about. But it's two big teams going after each other. One team that is very intent on what their identity is, and another team that's maybe a little bit more adaptable, but also still has the players to implement what they need to do as well. So I guess in hindsight, maybe it's not a huge surprise, albeit at the time, it probably ruined several of my weekends after it, if I'm honest. But yeah, I think that's a good thing about looking back. You think, okay, well, logically, yes, Barcelona probably should be winning this because of all the hype, but Bayern Munich are Bayern Munich, and they're going to stay in the game as much as they can, and they certainly did more than that.
Dave, it was only 1-0 to Bayern at half time.
Mm.
Thomas Müller finding space, weirdly, to nod home. All right, fine. Mario Gomez scores just after the break. Again, I'm not sure that survives a VAR check these days. I'm not sure half of Mario Gomez's goals survive a VAR check, it must be said. But, 20 minutes to go, it's 2-0. If Barcelona can get one, not driving seat, but, certainly doable. We've seen what they've turned around before. But then there's a collapse. Robben scores, really poor goal from Barcelona's point of view, and Müller finishes the game with just a few minutes remaining. That is something we hadn't seen with this team.
No, but it would become a thing of a Pep characteristic at both Bayern and at Manchester City in his early stages there, that when they lost goals, they lost them in bunches.
So even though we've got a new manager, that trait still
This is a
kind of
Pep
hangs
team.
around.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a Pep team. And I think that we have a manager who is a disciple of and has worked within, and the players, are still clearly drilled in that fashion. And why would you change it? It'd been so successful. Football evolves. Football has evolved rapidly, tactically through its entire existence, and certainly within the time frame of this show. And one of the things about tiki-taka, to use a simplistic but I think decent coverall term, was that as well as outmoving the ball rapidly, you had to run a lot. You had to in very specific areas, and you had to outwork your opponents, and they did that successfully. This iteration, though, gegenpressing, this next step built to combat it, the killing of space, the blocking of passes. Barcelona are suddenly faced with a team who actually work harder than they do. And that's not because they've become lazy. That's not a reflection on them. It's just something they haven't come up against before. And they come up against a system that is designed to combat their all-conquering system. And they don't know how to react to it because football evolves. And the thing about this match is, of course, Barcelona have chances because they are a very good side, but the tactical, Adam discussed there, the traps that they're leaving for them, they fall into them because it's new to them, because they haven't come up against this, or certainly not done at this level of intensity, at this level of skill. How do you stop Messi? You don't. You stop the ball getting to him. Now that requires an incredible amount of work to do that, but that's what they do over these two legs. And they are not, Adam mentioned it there, we think we've got some pretty good forward players as well. They really do. So when they are getting space and when they are making things happen, they take these chances, they punish you. I just think that this is, we spoke in the last episode about Klopp being a motive manager, and he is, and he's been very good at both Dortmund and Liverpool, but being able to we talk about the German system and Klopp's leadership being able to do that. We'll talk about him on the next one. But what Bayern do is they work harder, they outrun, they outfox tactically. This is a complete victory on every level for German football in this period over what has been the prevailing ideology. Now, we know that in years to come, Pep Guardiola will redefine himself and this style and still record, the base elements of it, but will adapt it to this. And if anything, his best City teams work even harder than this. But at this point, Bayern's game intelligence, their talented front players, their ability to interfere in the Barcelona system sends the Barcelona system haywire. It hasn't faced this before. It hasn't come up against it. Bayern have. Bayern have come up against Dortmund before. We're going to see it in the first leg of the other semi-final as well. So I mentioned last week there's very few football matches left me shocked. These two also did a bit, if I'm being honest with the listenership, because I thought Bayern could beat them narrowly. I don't think they could 7-0 them. And by the end, it's a punch-drunk Barcelona that are staggering about in the Camp Nou, wondering if someone got the number of the bus that hit them. And it was because they stopped them doing what they wanted to do, but not in a defensive fashion, or at least not in a wholly 10 men behind the ball, we don't want the ball fashion. It was breaking their machine, and I thought they'd done it spectacularly. And I still think this goes down as, for all the years we've covered, one of the great two-legged European performances. When you think of the quality of the opposition, it's a 10 out of 10 job in both legs. As you say, at 2-0 in the first game, if Barca get one, and they might have, are we talking about a completely different match? I'm not so sure we are. I think Bayern,
No, I don't think
being
so.
Bayern, go and do exactly what they plan to do anyway.
I don't think it's going to be. It's certainly not a different outcome. If it was never going to be turned around, but if Barcelona had managed to, they had to score early. They had to score in the first half. It's 0-0 at half time. I remember watching that second half, just a non-event. I mean, Bayern run out 3-0 winners on the night. It's just a kind of sad affair. And you know, this Barcelona team has been very, very special. When they've not won it, it's been because of volcanoes or, a kind of weird Chelsea
Juju.
belief. And things like that. Very, very narrow margins. And yeah, football does give us that, where eras come to an end, they come crashing down, and it certainly
City,
did.
Manchester City 24-25.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It
Another
does,
little thing I think is interesting in this one is like a kind of undercurrent, if you like, is both teams are in between Guardiola at this stage. And I think you see, again, I've said before, people that think Guardiola has played the same way since
it's nonsense.
2008 are not watching the same thing that we're watching. I would even, when we come on to next, our final season, the changes that he brings in at Bayern Munich, he incorporates parts of gegenpressing, but more importantly, looks at the players he's got. Some that we've mentioned there didn't have some of these type of players at Barcelona. So while it will still be positional play and tiki-taka and all that sort of stuff, he integrates it in. So it's interesting to see, I guess, the clash between what his two teams have been and will be, I guess, at this stage, and want to keep an eye on for next year as well.
Okay, Rocks Bayern safely through to Wembley. Their German counterparts drew Barcelona's Spanish counterparts, of course, Real Madrid in that semi-final. And again, Adam, it looks kind of like what we've seen before with Real Madrid's trip to Munich in that first semi-final, first leg. Dortmund are ahead early. Lewandowski pops them in front. Probably should have had a penalty, but it's not given. Real Madrid run up the park and a nice counter-attack, to be fair. And Cristiano Ronaldo slots home. It's 1-1. The away goal's got. We might get a second Dortmund goal, but you know, Mourinho and Madrid have kind of got what they came for. And 10, 15 minutes of the second half, this game is completely taken out of their control, and Lewandowski on complete fire. 3 more goals for him, 4 in total. The last one a penalty, but the third one, Adam, he rolls the ball around from left foot to right foot, shoots into the roof of the net. Really no space for him to have that kind of poise and control, and controls the word, really, literally. It was such a centre-forward performance at a time where centre-forwards were not a thing, or their death was being trumpeted for some time. And he's a bit of a throwback.
He is. And I think there's an adaptability piece here as well, going from Barrios, as I mentioned the year before, probably suited the system more to bringing in Lewandowski I think they got him for like £3 million from Polish team. And I think that was a big thing, I guess, about Dortmund's identity. We mentioned that 5-6 years before they were not in a good way at all financially. They did that thing where it's like, okay, let's try and find undervalued gems. At this time, scouting is advanced, of course, but it's nowhere near what it is just now in terms of data scouting and all that sort of stuff. So it was very much still mostly focused on in-person scouting, agents, word of mouth, all that sort of stuff. But they sort of just stuck to not quite their borders, but close to it. Poland, Austria, those type of countries on their doorstep that they would have had a similar to Scotland, England, Wales. I guess you know your home markets, if you like, well, or your neighbouring markets. They sort of did that. They brought in Piszczek, the right back, Kuba, who was attacking midfielder, who was Polish, bringing them in. Lewandowski coming as well. Yeah, it just sort of summed up the smart and sensible scouting. Let's not try and be Bayern Munich. Let's try and be better than the rest, I guess, for rightly or wrongly, or let's try and let's not cherry pick from your Gladbachs and all those sort of people because we can't really afford them, I guess, at this stage, but also we want to try and be a little bit different. And I think Lewandowski is a great example of that. Bringing him in for that amount of money was ridiculous. The amount of goals he scored, the career that he's had, still going now at Barcelona is absolutely phenomenal. But he was great in this game. Obviously, 4 goals. You're not going to complain against Real Madrid in a Champions League semi-final. The one point for this, I guess, and it's the opposite of the last round, is I think Mourinho didn't do what Pellegrini did. I think he probably tried to do, but again, you have to think about
players to do it.
But you have to think about these things. Are you going to get these players to do it? And should Real Madrid be doing that? Anyway, it's that sort of club thing. Am I going to go in a first leg of a semi-final against a team that I really should be beating with Cristiano Ronaldo, with Luka Modric, with Xavi Alonso, and sit back and let them and not go and attack? They'll be going to win every game. So it's that mindset thing that so often these smaller teams can do well against the bigger teams because the bigger teams will go and play their game, which unfortunately plays into the hands of the smaller teams' game, and it's just all a bit of a cat and mouse thing. So I think again they went with a single pivot. Madrid, Xavi Alonso, they had Khedira as well playing, Luka Modric as well, but more advanced, I would say. So they had Xavi Alonso. He just got slaughtered a little bit because you've got Kuba, you've got Marco Reus, you've got Götze, all swarming them. Sergio Ramos playing right back, Fabio Contrao, brilliant, but not really guys that are going to come in field in the way that Dortmund were playing in the half spaces. They're not going to come in and follow them there. They're more intent in getting the ball forwards to your Ronaldos, your Ozils, your Higuains. So the defensive side of it, I think, or that counter pressure that Dortmund want in that sort of area before the 18-yard box, I think they were just able to do whatever they wanted to do because Madrid, certainly as far as Spain are concerned, nobody was pressing like this. Nobody does press like this in Spain. So that's going to be a culture shock anyway. I just think they got caught a little bit trying to play their game and miss it, probably underestimating an opponent who was quite happy for them to play their game because it suited them. And yeah, I think this can happen when that happens. It's a funny little quirk.
Yeah, I think he did underestimate for sure. The equaliser was a brilliant counter-attack. There's method there. I just think overall he does not get Real Madrid players to buy in the way he got Inter players to buy in, for example. And that was always going to be the problem, which we've gone over because this is his final tie as a Real Madrid manager in the Champions League.
It is, yeah. And I was just going to round it off by saying Dortmund were absolutely perfect in transition, pressing. They did everything, winning the ball back in 5 seconds, all that stuff that we'll dig into briefly in the final. They executed everything to a T, and it was one of those games where it was just perfect for them.
As the execution, you had a centre forward who took the chances, and Madrid, when they did have opportunities, were maybe a wee bit wasteful, which they could be. David, when you look at the final aggregate score, however, it seems to suggest, for those just having a passing glance, as another classic 4-3 overall, because Real Madrid win 2-0 in Madrid. One more goal would have put them through. Unfortunately for them, those 2 goals came in the last 10 minutes of normal time, and weren't able to grab that. I think it set up for the legally defined grandstand finish, but it never really took hold. And I guess maybe the belief just wasn't there on the night. Otherwise, you would have expected, as some may have done, for them to race into an early lead and really, really set up a huge challenge for Dortmund to kind of see them out.
At the risk of being burned by Martin as a heretic, this is a rumoured knock on Mourinho from his time at Real Madrid, that in 2-legged matches, if the first leg hadn't gone well, he gave up. And that spirit went through the camp. And Diego Garcia's book about his time there, and by the way, Diego Garcia is basically a PR man for Casillas and Ramos. So that's, I think we can draw the line. Famously spoke about how after they lost 2-0 to Barca away, he said to the players, right, I've said in the press conference that it was the referee's fault, so I've set it up so we'll play 4-5-1 and get a draw in the next one, and it's already set out that that it was the refs that cost us. It wasn't our own fault. And you do wonder whether it's gossipy, obviously, but you do wonder whether there's an element of that belief in it, because I think, for instance, most era Real Madrid would still think 3-0 at home, we can do this. But they don't really get going for about an hour, do they? It's not full steam ahead early doors, which you would kind of expect. And I think that I don't know, did the first leg leave some scars on them? Were they not a happy side? They were playing, reasonably well domestically. It's a strange one. When they get one towards the end, I think there's 6 minutes left, something like that. Then the cavalry charge comes in and they damn near get it. But you are kind of left wondering where that was earlier in the game. Sorry to dust down my cliche, Martin, but this was too little, too late. And it's strange because I think there is a gap between Bayern Munich and Barcelona at this point. I'm not sure that same level of gap exists between these two sides. And as we mentioned, and I sort of went into earlier on this episode, a Klopp team that is emotion that can work both ways for you. Works in the first leg in a positive sense. Could have worked against them in the second, but I never thought Madrid approach you were spot on. Basically, I've come a long way to agree with you. There was a strange sense of Real Madrid do not believe they are going to turn this round.
Yeah, it goes back to that penalty shootout or the game against Bayern the season before for me. I think that's it over really for him there, him at the top level generally. Anyway,
he does win a title at Chelsea, be fair.
Oh, he does, and we'll speak next week. Could have got Chelsea to a Champions League final, those little horses of Chelsea. An all-German final at Wembley. We've just been in Wembley for a Champions League final.
Is it just me, by the way, or this century, does Wembley get a Champions League final every quarter of an hour?
Yeah. I think this one was for the FA's maybe 150th or something like that. There was some kind of FA commemoration, I'm sure. I think the 2 previous was just Wembley had gone for it. So this was maybe a bit of an afterthought. But Dortmund seem to turn up when it's at Wembley and don't awfully do particularly well. Adam, where are the differences here in terms of how they play? Because they've gone at each other. Dortmund obviously won a title of late. They have beaten Bayern in the previous season's German Cup final and battered them 5-2. And Klopp doesn't yet have this anyone who remember him going into that 19 Champions League final against Spurs for Liverpool hadn't won a cup final since that German Cup final 2012 in a run of maybe 6 or 7, I want to say, defeats in cup finals, in this kind of, including a Europa League final with Liverpool, and obviously this one. So that isn't there. They're up and coming. The verve of youth, the pressure's all on Bayern. Bayern going for a treble, of course, as well, with a new manager coming in. So many dynamics to this whole atmosphere around it. But on the pitch, what's a typical Bayern Dortmund game? What does it look like around this time?
I think it's probably as you would expect, I guess, a plucky upstart challenging a behemoth, I guess. And as much as I think now, with the money getting spent in Dortmund, certainly over the last 10 years or so, I think that sort of wears a bit thin, because they do spend a lot of money and they do underachieve for the most part now, I would say, consistently. But at this point, given where they've been, I think it's probably pretty relevant. I think, again, it's maybe a bit of a generalisation, but chaos of Klopp versus the sort of wily control of Jupp Heynckes as well. I think it's, again, probably a bit of a stereotype for a bigger club to be more in control and a younger club to let's go for it and try and get something off this big giant. But I think it probably works. I think we spoke about the financial issues, we spoke about the squad. This Dortmund team is built on a bit of a shoestring, even for this time. You've got Mario Reus, who obviously spent a bit of money on, but you've got Piszczek, Kuba that I mentioned. Mats Hummels was signed from Bayern for peanuts, and becomes so crucial to how they play. Shinji Kagawa, brought from the Japanese second division for about 300 grand. Gündogan there, Lewandowski we spoke about coming in for buttons. Mario Götze being through the academy. Kevin Grosskreutz, who starts this game as well, coming through the academy. Subotic. So it is kind of David and Goliathy. The one thing I guess going for Dortmund is because they'd had time, if you like, to go back a little bit. Jurgen Klopp obviously came in because he massively achieved it at Mainz, and Michael Zorc, the sporting director, saw that, brought him in. They had the time, which I don't think a lot of clubs get. They had 3 or 4 seasons to build what they wanted it to be without, we need to challenge Bayern Munich this year, we need to win the league, because it just wasn't in their sphere at that point. So they had a bit of time, I think, to build it up to what it comes to. I think that's what makes it such a fascinating battle round about this time, because it was that hitting the peak. And unfortunately, at this point, as I've said, for me, I think it's Bayern hitting quite close to their peak, certainly this season, for sure. So it was an interesting battle. But I think as far as Bayern are concerned, a couple of things that they sort of had going for them. I guess it probably works in terms of how the game went as well. Dortmund start the first half an hour going at it, hell for leather. Different to Mourinho again, where Jupp Heynckes was like, just let them do it, basically, puff themselves out, for want of a better phrase. We'll let them do it, and then they start to come into it. Then they've got a bit more control in that. So I think the game itself probably sums up where two clubs were. You've got the little yappy dog going at it crazy, and then you've got maybe the old and world weary dog who's like, just you wait, I'll get there in the end. Tortoising the hare, if you want another analogy for it. So yeah, I think the big things for Bayern that really helped them, I think, moving into this pressing era, are some of the signings they'll make. First of all, Mario Götze, when he comes in, I'm not sure that his career very, very much in terms of going there, but he probably helps them because that gives them another dimension. They've got Thomas Müller, who's a bit of a pressing machine, so him coming to the fore really helps. Manuel Neuer, sweeper keepering, lets them play that high line, lets them sit there on the halfway line with their defenders, who are not particularly rapid defenders, but lets them sit there because they know they've got him behind them that can sweep up any balls. Xavi Martinez as well, that they can flip between centre half, which they'll do obviously coming up, and centre mid as well. So there's a few things in there that will sort of let them, while they're not as chaotic and gegenpressy as Dortmund are, and they probably will never really get to that because, as you mentioned, they've got bigger players that are not really going to commit to that completely. They're able to bring a bit into it, I think, to give themselves a pretty solid base, and I think we see that this year.
The game itself, then, 0-0 at half time. Adam, what kind of first 45 was it?
So, like I said, I think they really Dortmund do okay. They do more than okay. I think Mario Götze is injured and missed the game, obviously. And I think the big thing was, what would they do? Like, how would they deal with this? Because they didn't really have someone. What they did was they moved Marco Reus into the middle. Again, something that it's now kind of par for the course that most wingers probably, if you're not just reliant on pace and you've got a bit of trickery, you're probably going to play in the middle at some points, maybe even centre mid now, as you see. But at that point, bringing Marco Reus in and playing Kevin Grosskreutz, it's a It's a reduction in talent, I guess, but it's someone who understands the system to an absolute T. Dortmund boy growing up, gets the full thing, is going to do lots more running and work for the team than Götze is. So that sort of let Reus move into the middle. Reus absolutely terrific in transition. They didn't necessarily go hell for leather, Reus and Lewandowski, against the two centre halves. They just sort of let them, I guess, not quite let them play out, but sort of forced them to play out in ways that suited them, blocking their passes into Schweinsteiger. That was a big thing as well, because Schweinsteiger and Martinez in the middle was a huge focus, because that was their game, really, wasn't it? Get the balls into them and then let them unload to that three behind Mandžukić and Ribéry, Müller and Robben. So they didn't do it. And then, as we've said, when they lost the ball, they had Alaba and Lam, the Dortmund's two, Kuba and Grosskreutz pinned Alaba and Lam back quite a lot in this game. And that was their sort of triggers. Let's try and get the ball off of them. Those were deemed as the weak points, which seems mental now. David Alaba and Philipp Lam are ridiculously good on the ball, but I guess it was all about the positions that they were in rather than the quality of player that they were. So they pinned them back to try and isolate the defenders, I guess, who good defenders but pretty slow. At this point, Boateng was not as amazing as he would go on to be, but he was still pretty decent. But they pinned them back and they tried to get those spaces, and I think it worked to an extent, but I think Dortmund didn't take their opportunities, I guess, shall we say. And I think Bayern kind of just sort of came into it a bit more. They started getting Javi Martinez free in decent areas. They started using Müller and Arjen Robben to rotate a bit more. Dortmund's not a massively great defensive team. They relied on basically nobody getting through the press. Once they sort of started to get through, and once Bayern started to use the wings a bit more, once Robben was finding the space behind Schmelzer at left back, they just took control. I would say it wasn't a massive shift. It wasn't Dortmund going hell for leather and then Bayern doing it. It was almost like grinding them down, wearing them out, puffing them out, and then Bayern being key in the key moments as they always are. I think sums it up. So yeah, David versus Goliath. Let them puff themselves out, and then we'll take them. We'll take them late on. I think probably sums it up.
And Davey, talking about Dortmund and Champions League finals at Wembley, I mean, this is almost the same script as 2024. Had their chances, didn't take them. The big, wee bit more pragmatic side, absorb it, and then can feel, well, you haven't capitalised on that. It's time for us to get going. And Bayern certainly were by the end of the first half, and absolutely were at the start of the second. And Adam mentioned using the width more. Robben gets in behind, cuts it back, and your boy Mandžukić is there. You would describe it, some might describe it as a tap in, it's close range. I think there's a lot of work to do to control that. I don't think he's got a lot of time in which to change shape and adjust and score. But he does the biz, as you've mentioned.
Yeah, I've waxed lyrical about him previously. A great player, and you're absolutely correct. It's almost eerie, isn't it, the parallels? But then again, I think all of us watching that final in 2024 kind of watched the chances rack up, and I don't think there was a single person watching that match didn't know exactly what was just about to take place. I wonder if that's a sense that is almost held at a core level by Dortmund, that something will go wrong.
Is it not just held at a
some
core
point.
level by any smaller team against the bigger
Against a
team?
big dog who
You need to take your chances. Well, I don't want to sound like Andy Gray, but you need to score when you're on top. You know,
your friend
if you
Andy Gray, you don't want to sound like your
if
pal.
Manuel Neuer has scored have made 5 saves early on, it must be a kind of we've maybe had our moment there. I think that tale's as old as football. To be honest,
it is. And Adam's right. It's a side with a superiority complex against a side with an inferiority complex, and that gets reinforced by the fact, as you say, that they put themselves into a position, and it feels like a self-fulfilling circle, doesn't it? Really, that we know what happens now. And in both of these matches, I think neutrals, we felt this, and it did. It takes something, because we've spoken a lot about auras and history and belief throughout clubs. Liverpool, we've talked about it a lot as something that's there. Arsenal, we've talked about as something that it isn't there. This is as true here. This is Bayern Munich. We'll do something. Something will happen. Something will come. Borussia Dortmund, they don't have that. They don't have that weight of history behind them. They don't have that sense from the supporters to the executives that, of course, we're going to win this. This is who we are. And it very much comes through here. And they were unfortunate, but scoring goals is a skill. Taking your chances. It's not bad luck. And maybe you mentioned it, I think, in one of the earlier matches, the term harem scarum. And I think sometimes the contrast with, I mentioned the precision with which Bayern were going through this. It sort of happens here when you're holding everything together and going at 110 miles an hour, and it's a thrill ride and it's amazing. It's brilliant when it comes off and it's a rush like no other. But if you let one thing go, it can all get away from you really quickly. Whereas if you're much more controlled in your journey, I think it's much harder to be forced off course, and that's what sort of happens here. And yeah, I have to admit, even throughout that first half, I was sitting saying, they'll rue that. And you're right, it's a cliche, but it's only a cliche because it's true. We'll see it, and we'll see it this year in any cup competition that we choose to follow in the third round. A smaller club will come up against a bigger one and play really well and go out, because that is what happens. And belief is such a huge part of it, and skill, obviously. I would probably argue that this is a more consistently good side in Bayern than Dortmund. I think Dortmund are capable of maybe more special performances, but I think in straight consistency, I would go with Bayern, and where they both finish up at the end of the season seems to indicate that as well. But yeah, I think that there's definitely aura can be. And it's unfair because what's happened in the past has nothing to do with that group of Dortmund players, and similarly, what's happened in the past has nothing to do with a Liverpool side. But yeah, they can tap into this. It exists. It is metaphysical, but it's somehow real.
I think Jupp Heynckes deserves a bit of credit as well from me, Martin.
Yes.
Quite a lot of credit, I think. A bit of credit is probably understating it. And he doesn't really get it. I would even argue that, not that Louis van Gaal was great there, but the fact that he brings in Robben and Ribéry at that point, he probably, in a way, people are like, well, that changes it a little bit more than Jupp Heynckes, even though he wins a treble and wins the Champions League. So I think by virtue of maybe not being flashy, obviously not being a big personality, not really playing a defined style that you would think, oh wow, that's different. Just sensible policies, good solid attacking football. Given when he turned up, they were third that season, which is basically a relegation for Bayern Munich. Not that he had to turn much round, but just two really good seasons, I think, for them, going to the final and then going to the final both years, and obviously managing to get it in this one. I think he deserves a hell of a lot of credit for them, and it's maybe not something that he really gets with Guardiola coming so soon after.
He just doesn't get it in his career, winning Champions Leagues and then fucking off because there's something else coming in. All that talk about narrative and underdog story and all that. Dortmund are level fairly soon, Adam, because big Dante, who's on a booking, kicks Marco Reus, doesn't he, in the box. It's an absolute clear penalty. I love when they plead their innocence when it's so clear cut, and Gündogan doesn't it, that steps up and very definitively levels the final, and it's a kind of proper cut final for the last 20 odd minutes because everything's hanging in the balance. It really is moment of magic or mistake or whatever. There are opportunities for both sides, but it's probably fittingly for his performance, not just this season, but over the past couple of Champions League seasons. He missed a final in the Champions League final. He missed a penalty, in the Champions League final last season in Munich. And it's Arjen Robben who has the opportunity which he takes to win it with a minute to go. Nice work by Ribéry, by the way, in terms of that close control and just allowing that move right through the centre of the Dortmund defence. But it is just, I thought, a kind of breathless last 20 or 25, 30 minutes and a last minute win on a Champions League final. It rips everything up, doesn't it? It dissolves all that pain from 12 months ago.
I think it's always football's full of these nice little narratives, isn't there? These nice little links. It probably could only really be him if we want to go the cliche. But yeah, I think Dortmund tried their best towards the end after the penalty. Obviously, you'd think incentive-wise. Still don't really remember from watching it live. Don't really remember thinking that they would go on and sort of grab it. I did feel like they needed to get a goal or two early in the game, just in terms of how it was going. But I don't think extra time was out of the equation, to be honest. But yeah, the sucker punch, a very Bayern, a very big dog sucker punch, and then by the time the goal comes, it's just not. There's not enough time really to do it. So I think it's a bit of a glorious failure for that team, and for Bayern, it is a bit of a culmination. Like we said, they have missed out on a few occasions. So good, particularly because of the one the year before as well, where they missed out as well. It's good for them to go and get that. And you've also got this wave of players that we mentioned, your Neuers, your Müllers, your Lahm, all these guys, Ozil, obviously not here, but all those sort of German players that would then go on the year after to be part of the World Cup squad as well. It's good for them, I guess, to get that moment in there as well. I think be interesting. I don't know what you think. How do you think it would have went if Guardiola didn't go there? What would they have done? Do you think Jupp Heynckes would have stayed on again and they'd have went again? Or do you think it would have been, no, that's me, quite happy, I've done my bit, I've got them back to where they want to go, I'll just disappear into the sunset? I can't quite remember the narrative around him. I think it was, by this point, it was clear Guardiola was 100% taking over. What do you think would have happened? Do you think they would have built on it with Heynckes, or would they have tried to go in another direction?
They're a funny club at times. Yeah. I think they need, in order for long-term thinking, I think they needed a kind of Guardiola. I think Heynckes built to that. And
yeah, Pep doesn't go anywhere if they haven't put the infrastructure in for him already.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's Heynckes is a kind of I'm here to do a job. I've done my job. Thanks for your time. See you after. He's done that before. Done it before at Real Madrid as well. I think extra time was absolutely on the cards, Adam. That penalty shootout would have been worth watching, I think, given what had happened the year before. You mentioned Heynckes not getting his flowers a wee bit, Adam. A few treble winners over the course of this 25 years. United, Inter, Barcelona. I don't think this team gets talked about enough in this country, maybe across Europe. It will in Bavaria, I presume, but probably doesn't get a lot of the recognition. Again, is this just because it's a club that people just do not warm to unless they've got a dark soul like David and me?
I think so. Yeah, it's not a club for narratives or romanticism or anything like that. So I think that probably plays quite a big part in it. Even with PSG as well, this summer winning it, a lot of people conflicted about that was great football, and they've played a really great season and worthy winners. There's still people that sort of sticks in their craw to say that, which is fair enough. I was the same with Juventus during their run to 9 or 10, wasn't it? They got to a few years back. You're like, oh yeah, well done.
9, yeah.
Not really good football though, is it? In a kind of like smarmy way. So yeah, I think it is just that big club thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you and me, Martin, are sort of conditionally the other way to Adam on this, whereas we look at Real Madrid and their complete bastardry, and we look at more
Overdogs.
romantic clubs, overdogs, yes, and the way that they will, I mean, Bayern's transfer methods in Germany are hilariously upfront. If there's somebody good, they check if he's leaving Germany to a big dog club, and if they aren't, they'll just have him. And they make no bones about it whatsoever. I agree with you both. I think that they are a club, unless you do thrill to that, that are hard to love. I also think, to beat my drum on here again, that there is less love in the UK for German clubs because it has never quite caught on in the way that Serie A did, or then the La Liga in this century did. It's not a league, a bit like the French league as well now, why PSG maybe have up until recently failed to garner a lot of love here. There are obviously other circumstances as well, but I think as well that the manner of Bayern as a club, they are not cuddly. They have, Uli Hoeneß and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, who will openly come out in a way that I think British people, with our sense of self-deprecation and, you always kind of bring yourself down and bring others, to, a peg or two. They don't conduct themselves in that fashion whatsoever. They are big dogs. They know they're big dogs, and they act like it. And I think that makes it kind of hard to warm to us. But I do wonder if German football would have been viewed differently if perhaps 20, 30 years ago it had had its own James Richardson or even its own Guillaume Balaguer to maybe light some fires under it for us as a nation, whereas it does seem to be still, beloved of people that we might term, again, it's not a fair term, but still football hipster types, and less so by ordinary run-of-the-mill neutrals.
Okay. Again, I'll repeat this point from last week to go through the pain that those players and fans must have experienced losing that Champions League final at home to immediately win a treble. And immediately win that competition, I think takes huge reserves. And it's a reminder that football doesn't end. It continues. If you're on top, you will not be forever. And when you're feeling pain, you will not forever, despite how it may feel at times. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Cheers, David.
I'm afraid I need 1 minute before we go because I promised them a flash mob. And
of course.
I would be letting the side down. For those of you who know what I'm referring to, you're already chuckling. For those of you who don't, it is on YouTube and I urge you all to go and watch it. The day after this final, when the Borussia Dortmund players, who you might imagine were gutted, are making their way to the check-in desk at Heathrow Airport, for it was there. Their kit makers, Puma, decided to sponsor them, decided to cheer them up by arranging a flash mob, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a random assortment of dancing, gunning idiots who jump about, sing stupid songs, do dances while wearing Borussia Dortmund colours, to tell them that we still love you. And the reaction from their the Borussia Dortmund staff and players is sort of akin to, I think, how most of us would feel if we saw a pigeon eating a bit of sick in the street. It is wonderful. If looks could kill, then every one of Puma's dancers would currently be 12 years underground. It's a fantastic moment, so ill thought out, and went viral for the very wrong reasons.
Oh, what a touchstone of 2013 culture that is, David. Cheers for that. We start our final part of the series next week, 2013-14. Ancelotti's at Madrid, Mourinho's back at the Bridge, Pep is at Bayern, and David Moyes is at Old Trafford. Until then, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.